Well, hopefully everybody is getting rested from those who've gone through graduation, and for the rest of you who still maybe have graduation coming, I hope that we really appreciate you taking the time to be here at such a busy time of the year and in such a really unprecedented year that we're having. I get the great pleasure to introduce this wonderful webinar, and it's a real treat to be with such wonderful scholars and practitioners in higher education. Today, the webinar is going to focus on a really important, I think, future area for higher education. The title of the webinar is Building Impactful Professional Learning Communities in Higher Education to Support Student Success. And this is such an important time to be supporting historically marginalized students in higher education, which was the focus of this Promoting at Promise Student Success project. And we really need to do so in ways that continue to get at the root of the issues, which are, poorly designed campus policies and practices and approaches that really need to be rethought. And professional learning communities are a wonderful space for doing that kind of deep thinking to help improve our campus cultures and environments to support all students. One of the important parts we're going to talk about with these professional learning communities is they are cross-functional, bringing in people from academic, student affairs, and even non-student facing areas to really break down silos. And we know it's those silos that have impacted student success, and professional learning communities are a way to get beyond our bureaucratic silos and to really put the student at the center in our planning. They're a way to rethink our campus design and really create cultures of student success. So we're excited that you're here to think about this idea with us. We can go on to the next slide. I'll set out our plan for today. We're doing the welcomes in the chat, and please, for those of you joining, please put in where you're from. And we're going to have a quick overview of the research we've been doing on the professional learning communities to help share the insights and learnings we've had, and to share the resources that we've created. We have a rich set of resources to help others who want to start professional learning communities to do that. Then we're going to transition into a panel, and that panel will have, if we move on to the next slide, I can show who the, thank you, who's going to be a part of this panel discussion. And then we're going to move into, at the very end, your questions. So please feel free to put those in the chat throughout the discussion. We'll pick those up. We'll be scanning the chat for your questions. So we'll have a really good opportunity for engagement with you. So I have the pleasure of introducing Zoe Corwin and Ron Hallett from the USC research team. They're the ones who are going to give you the overview of the research that I mentioned. And then we have three wonderful panelists that were participants in the professional learning communities and are going to share with you their experiences, the impact of participating in this, and some of the lessons learned that they have. And that panel is going to be led by Leanna Hippolyte, who is also a part of our USC research team. The three panelists that we have is Melissa Burt, who's the Associate Dean for the College of Communications, and that she's at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. We also have joined by Amy Goodburn, who is this Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Undergraduate Education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And third, we have Jen Harvey, who is the Director of the Thompson Scholars Learning Communities at the University of Nebraska and Kearney. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation with them. And I will now hand it off to Zoe Corwin to help you get a sort of a larger look at what we learned. And I also just want to put a pitch out before I hand it over to really look at the overall PASS, as we call it, Promoting at Promise Student Success website and project to learn even more than what we're going to talk about here today with the professional learning communities. There's a whole set of other resources on student support, including our model of ecological validation. Zoe, take it off.
Thank you, Adriana, and welcome everyone. It's been really exciting to see the chat. People are coming in from all different parts of the country and from all different facets of higher ed. We have students, we have senior administrators, we have everyone in between. So welcome. I'm Zoe Corwin, research professor at the Pullias Center, and I'm going to be guiding you for the next 7 minutes. As you may know, professional learning communities, or PLCs, are more commonly held in K-12 settings. After conducting PLCs in collaboration with the 3 University of Nebraska campuses, we believe significant potential exists in this approach as a strategy for higher education for the many of the reasons that Adriana just mentioned. PLCs provide an opportunity for cross-functional collaboration, just to reiterate that, bringing together student affairs and academic affairs practitioners, faculty, central administrators, including institutional researchers, and senior level admin to learn together, unlearn together, imagine, strategize, and enact change. I'm going to talk with you through the basics of how we launched and facilitated the PLCs over the course of 3 years. And by we, I mean our research team in partnership with 2 co-leads from each of the 3 University of Nebraska campuses and their colleagues who ranged from 8 to 20 participants, depending on the campus. Next slide, please. Our journey with the University of Nebraska PLCs was a research practice partnership, which meant we observed hundreds of hours of meetings, conducted over 150 interviews with participants, collected hundreds of survey responses, and analyzed a variety of artifacts. Consequently, we've been able to start publishing about the PLC process. These articles are all housed on our website. I'm going to be touching on key points from the articles in later slides, but rather superficially given the time constraints of the webinar. So please return to the articles for a deeper dive into how the PLCs facilitated learning. Next slide, please. Before I share details about the structure of the PLCs, I'm going to take you on a quick detour to help you understand some important context. So as Adriana mentioned, the PLCs were part of a much larger decade-long mixed method study designed to better understand how the University of Nebraska campuses were supporting the success of their at-promise students. Excuse me. Those are students from low-income, racially minoritized, rural, and or first-generation backgrounds. During the first phase of the project, our research team studied how the Thompson Scholars Learning Community, a comprehensive college transition program, supported students' academic and psychosocial growth. Instead of students being left out to figure out how to navigate siloed or even centralized resources that one finds in traditional settings, these programs had created a validating system where validating points of contact, such as program staff, got to know students and guided them in navigating a coordinated set of campus resources and relationships. In this framing, the how of support, or the process, was more important than the what, or the program components. We termed this effective approach that came from the campuses as ecological validation. Next slide. Ecological validation entails interacting with students in ways that are strengths-oriented, holistic, paying attention to students' unique identities, experiences, goals, and concerns, in tune with students' developmental stages, and involves proactive outreach to students. Educators in this model engage in consistent reflective practice and work collaboratively with colleagues across campus. The PLCs were created in the second phase of the research project, this decade-long project, to help the broader campuses learn about the EV model and collectively figure out how to expand this concept of ecological validation, this approach across campus. Okay, with the next slide, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit. First, composition was key. It's no surprise. The co-leads were selected by senior leadership. This was really important to ensure high-level support for the PLCs. And then the co-leads were asked to recruit participants who were either serving as change agents currently or had the potential to develop into campus change agents. Recruitment involved making sure that the group included participants who represented different roles and units, varied longevity on campus, and diverse personal identities. As a critical first step, the PLCs worked to establish trust so that participants could be vulnerable, learn deeply, take risks together, imagine expansively, and rely on each other as part of an expanded campus network. We took the first year to slow down and learn prior to acting. And as you can imagine, the PLC participants were doers on campus. So this pace was different and really valued by the participants. What mattered most in that learning phase was that participants developed a common language and a shared understanding of the problems and opportunities of their particular campus. As more and more people became familiar with the concepts of ecological validation, the power of the work gained momentum. During the PLC journey, it was really important that the activities were engaging and compelling, and we have lots of examples in the syllabus, and that the work that Ron's going to talk to you about in just a moment, and that the group carved out time to assess their progress and plan for sustaining the work. We also have guides for how to do that. After a year of learning together, the PLCs broke into working groups and focused on developing targeted approaches to address their goals. It's also worth mentioning that PLC members tended to integrate lessons learned into their own units or among their own spheres of influence first, and then were able to address more complex institution-wide change. For the next slide, we're going to talk about the processes. Yes, thank you. So the PLCs developed approaches to communicate with campus stakeholders about ecological validation and also about the work of the PLCs. This was really important to garner support for their efforts. Campus data was a critical tool, really vital tool for the groups as they sought to map challenges and opportunities on campus. They brought in campus data regularly to their meetings. The groups explored their own spheres of influence and strategized about how to connect to leaders and leverage their network in support of at-promise student success, very much focused on that goal. They reviewed processes, policies, and practices to make sure those aligned with the ecological validation framework. As one example, campuses created a system for reviewing student-facing communications to make sure that the language was validating and entailed coordinated support for students. They incorporated time for reflection and evaluation of their progress, constantly pushing themselves to think about how to expand the EV approach and sustain the work. The groups created incredible professional development opportunities. Like, that's the power of bringing brilliant minds together. Each PLC held a summit and developed online materials to help publicize the EV approach. And one campus has launched a series of book clubs. All the campuses are rolling out the work in different ways. Prior to you hearing from the PLC participants themselves, my colleague Ron Hallett will describe the open access resources that we've created for your use. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Zoe. Let's go ahead and transition to the next slide. So, one of the things that we're super excited about is while we spent the past 4 years developing, implementing, and studying the process, we've been committed to creating open access resources for any other campus that would like to engage in this process. On our website, which Elizabeth is posting the links, you will find the research briefs, you will find access to or links to the research articles, but you'll also find a PLC syllabus that would guide people through the learning process. All the activities are available there, as well as a guidebook for facilitators. While we did the study and did this pilot stage, it was a 3-year process. We've also developed these materials so the process could go much more quickly. So you could do a learning stage over the summer and then implementation the year that followed. Really, it's designed to be catered towards your campus context. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. And if you have questions that you that come up, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them. The guidebook has, I like to think of this, I used to be a K-12 teacher, as the book that has both the information that's in the syllabus, but then how would you actually implement this activity, or what is the underlying goal? And so this resource is really helpful for facilitators, particularly if they weren't working in close collaboration with an outside facilitator. Next slide. And then the syllabus has each a module that you could do over whatever period of time made the most sense. We have a ton of suggested activities. What we found when we provided these to our campus partners was that this was a good starting point, and then they could draw from those to create campus-specific activities that made the most sense. A lot of the learning involved like reading the book that we published, reading other practice briefs, but also engaging with campus data or other sorts of materials on campus to really think about translating it to the campus context. Next slide. Great. So if you go onto the link that Elizabeth had, all of the activities are there. Also, all of the explanations of different concepts that Zoe overviewed are available. These are all publicly available. It could be used both in a PLC, but we've also seen some of our campus partners pull some of these materials to use for other activities. So you could also do this within a unit level meeting, just even one of the activities that's available. So we hope that you get a chance to peruse the many resources that we have available. All right, as we transition to the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Leanna Hippolyte.
Thank you so much, Ron. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are across the country and joining us today. My name is Leanna Hippolyte. I'm an assistant professor at Cal Poly Pomona, and I've had the ultimate privilege and honor of working on this project for the last decade, and particularly with the professional learning communities that you just heard about for the last 3 years with our campus partners that you will be hearing from shortly as our panelists. And so what we've asked our panelists to do today is to provide you with brief presentations that give you some context for their individual campuses. So you'll learn a little bit more about the structure of their PLC and how they believe students are being positively impacted by the work of the PLC. Also, each panelist has been given a particular question that they're going to explore within their campus context as well. And so our first speaker, Melissa, is going to be tackling what strategies were most successful for spreading the concept of ecological validation that you heard about earlier from Zoe. Followed by Amy, who will be talking about what they learned about institutional culture change through the facilitation of and participation in the PLC. And then finally, you'll hear from Jen Harvey, who will talk about the most meaningful part about their participation in the PLC. So just a brief introduction to our panelists in the context of what you'll be hearing from their presentations, but really want to leave the mic and the stage to them. And so Dr. Melissa Berkey, you are up first and the mic is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I see a couple of my PLC friends in the are part of this, so I'm glad to have your support here today. I am at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, which is considered to be the metropolitan university for the University of Nebraska system. Our enrollment is right around 15,000, and we have a very diverse student body. Omaha is the largest city in the state, and also hosts the largest school district in the state. So we have a very diverse student body. We also have a large population of first generation students. So again, we were really drawn to this work because we deal with a lot of students who are experiencing college for the first time and may not have the language or of how to navigate college, they may not have role models or a support system in place that can help them be successful. So this is one of the things that was really helpful in doing this work. Next slide, please. So my, again, as Leanne said, my question is to talk about the strategies that were most successful for spreading ecological validation. And it's going to sound a lot like what Zoe just spoke about. This initial team being comprised of that broad cross-section, not only of faculty, but of also staff, was just so important, because we all get in our own little silos and we all experience things a little bit differently. So to sit down and have those conversations with someone from the registrar's office or someone from financial aid, we might sit at our desks and say, those darn financial aid people, don't they understand what's going on? And at the same time, they're sitting at their desks talking about faculty and what faculty don't understand. So this was an incredible opportunity to get together with those people and talk about those kinds of shared concerns that we have, and to learn more about each other's processes too, to help build a better experience for students. I think that our campus leaders were especially good at putting together that initial team. So these are people that were already engaged and didn't need that hard sell. There are naysayers all over campus. And I don't think my campus is unique to that. So they did a really great job of finding people to serve on this team that had that mindset of yes and, as opposed to no, we can't do that, or we've already done it, we've always done it this way. So there was an openness in that initial team to really have that growth mindset and really have that commitment to making things better for students. And then I think the meetings of our PLC were structured in such a way that, we got to interact with all different people, and they mixed up the groups each time, and the activities that we did really helped us learn about one another and helped us gain new perspectives from on the concept of ecological validation from an advisor standpoint, from a faculty member standpoint, from the registrar standpoint. So again, by the time those 3 years were up, we really had a great sense of what each one of us did, how we fit into the whole puzzle of making that experience for the student more ecologically validating. Next slide. So here are the things that kind of happen. And as soon as I was thinking about this, I thought about an octopus, because these tentacles just started reaching out. The first thing that we did was our Maverick Matters Symposium. And that's where we targeted people, again, kind of like our group, those who we knew would be receptive to hearing these concepts. And we had our Maverick Matters Symposium was our first event. And we presented these concepts of ecological validation. We had some scenarios of how we might solve a situation that a student would be experiencing, and the people got to talk at the table. So it was a highly participative experience. We had a former graduate who was a first-generation student who experienced some of the issues that we've talked about come and tell their success story, which was amazing. The tentacles kind of grew. So we started having events both on and off campus. I've talked about this at our fall faculty retreat last year, and we did activities with our faculty. But another advisor from another college and we presented at our DEAI symposium that we had earlier this fall and talked about these concepts again. So we're reaching out to a different audience each time. And then finally, I had the opportunity to present at an AAC&U conference. It was the class conference on student success, and talk about this as well. And we brought 2 faculty members who talked about how they're applying these strategies in their classes. We took that model that was shown earlier, and we branded it in our school colors, and we added our mascot on it and things like that, so that it becomes part of the culture here. And that's how we think of student success. And so that's widely distributed to people. And we've seen some policy changes as well as just rather than talking about these concepts. For one of them, we looked at all of our letters that we were sending around the idea of academic probation, and how can we make those more student friendly and less punitive and things like that. So we did a lot of work around that. My college, because I'm in the College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media, I work with journalism students, and our TV and radio people helped us create this video about ecological validation, because we all kind of bring our own experience to any meeting that we have. And the intent of this video was to kind of help people do a reset at the beginning of meetings, to help them understand that this is not about you and your experience. It's about the student's experience, which could be very different from what we have. And thanks to Elizabeth for putting that link in there, so you'll be able to watch that at your own leisure. And even though our work has ended, Dustin Pendley, I see he's in attendance here. He has reached out and kind of started our ecological validation committee, and we have established a institutional email address about this, so that we can have people email us with questions. We're starting a newsletter. So this is in its infancy, but this is just another tentacle that has grown as a result of our work. And it's really becoming a part of our DNA and what we do on a daily basis. So that's what's happening on our campus. Oh, and here are the branded information that you can see that we did. So with that, I'll let my next colleague take over.
Thanks, Melissa. Just to give you a little context, as Melissa did for UNO, my name is Amy Goodburn. I'm the Senior Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Undergraduate Education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which we call UNL for short. And UNL is Nebraska's public land-grant research university located in the state capital of Lincoln. We're a member of the Big Ten Academic Alliance and a Carnegie Classified Community Engagement University. And our population has about 21,000 undergraduates. About 69% of them are from Nebraska, and 24% are first generation and Pell eligible or low income. Next slide, please. So as we've talked about cross-functional teams, I wanted to give you a little sense of who was participating in the cross-functional team at UNL's PLC, which entailed faculty and staff from 12 campus units and was co-facilitated by myself and an assistant vice chancellor of student life. On the right, you can see our PLC's goals and strategies. Our overall goal was to increase degree completion and equity by creating a validating ecology for our students. And while each of us were exploring different projects around ecological validation within our units, collectively we agreed to review language and messaging, to tailor and share the past research with other people, to develop tools to assess changes, and then to use these tools to assess our own approaches within our individual units. Next slide, please. So similar to what Melissa just described, a key activity for our PLC was organizing campus forums to share the past research, but also to build those cross-functional relationships that we had found so important to our own PLC experiences. Our first forum was held in March of 2022 and engaged over 100 people with a student panel and then discussion of student vignettes in small groups. Since then, we've held 6 other forums with over 500 faculty and staff from 106 different campus units participating. Next slide, please. The forums have led to actions for individual participants and reflections on how they might use the research with their own units. They have also led, though, to broader institutional change. One is the development of the student referral guide, which you can see on your right. At one of the forums, some faculty expressed confusion over how to connect students to resources. They knew we had a lot of resources for students, but they didn't know how to get them connected. So we developed this guide and then distributed over 3,500 of them across our campus to faculty and staff to help address this concern. We also used our PLC work for UNL's quality initiative for our Higher Learning Commission accreditation. Titled Building a UNL Culture Where Every Person Matters, our quality initiative focused on how we were applying the Ecology of Validation framework across the campus. So I was asked to comment a little bit on some of the lessons learned about institutional change based on my experiences with our PLC. And I've drilled down to 5 sort of lessons that I have taken away from my experiences. The first one is that, contrary to popular opinion, not all faculty and staff are apathetic or resistant to institutional change. We found that the faculty and staff who attended our forums were hungry for opportunities to meet others outside of their units and to develop a broader understanding of how the university works to support our students. Second, we found it was critical for PLC participants to reflect on how their units contribute to the student success ecosystem, especially those who are not typically viewed as student-facing. For example, one of our PLC members was from the Office of Institutional Research, and he said initially that he didn't think he had much to offer the PLC because his unit works with numbers and not students. But after discussing the past research with others, he began to see how the unit's data labels and definitions were unintentionally creating gaps in how our students' experiences were being collected and understood. Third, it was critical to our institutional change work to center our conversations with a common language and set of principles. Initially, when people viewed validating ecology, they thought, well, it's just about being nice to students. The forums worked to deepen people's understanding of how the principles could be used to examine how their units works from a systems perspective, to examine the language and the practices and the processes through that equity lens that is so important. Fourth, it was challenging to drive institutional change from a PLC unless there's a clear mechanism and commitment by university leadership to implement the recommendations that the PLC might make. Our PLC served as an incubator for many recommendations around campus improvement. Some were fed into existing councils that existed prior to the PLC. But for the most part, though, the PLC was positioned to surface ideas and provide meaningful learning experiences for participants. It may have been less successful in implementing change strategies. Indeed, there was a vibrant conversation about whether we should even be charged to do so, thinking about what is the key goal or purpose of a PLC. And lastly, as a university leader, I've tried to embed insights from the PLC into my ongoing work. So far, I would describe this work as incremental rather than transformational. Our Retention Leaders Council, which I chair, has discussed chapters of the book, Creating a Campus-Wide Culture of Student Success. And I've organized workshops for the 80+ staff across my units that are explicitly designed to promote collaboration and learning across their units. These practices are important, but perhaps not enough. Creating institutional change through equity-focused work is hard, especially when our organizational structures are siloed and not incentivized to support the ongoing relational labor that's required. The PLC gave us a powerful opportunity to engage in this work over time, and scaling this type of opportunity to enable truly transformative change is what I'm strongly committed to continuing forward in the future. I think next we are going to be going to Jen Harvey.
Good afternoon. Again, I am Jennifer Harvey, and I work at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, or UNK, as the director of the Thompson Scholars Learning Community. So first, I want to share a little bit about our campus. UNK is in central Nebraska and is also a public residential university. We were recognized this spring as a research college and university by the American Council on Education and the Carnegie Foundation. Our campus was also recognized in the inaugural class of First Gen Forward Network Champions. So we've had a lot going on in terms of momentum on our campus. As you can see on the slide, while UNK enrolls students from across the United States and the globe, many of our students come from rural areas of Nebraska. 44% of our students are Pell eligible, and 41.6% of our students are first generation. I'm also first generation, so I'm very proud to be doing this work. Next slide, please. You've heard about the incredible PLC teams at the other campuses, and UNK was very much like those. In collaboration with USC's past team, our PLC at UNK was led by a faculty member, Dr. Tony Hill, and a staff member, Dr. Erin Estes, who both had experience with the ecological validation model of student success. So we were a team of very dynamic educators, go-getters who were looking to build momentum for student success on our campus. Our PLC numbers varied across the years due to institutional change, but it included members of our administration, faculty from our 3 academic colleges, as well as staff from academic affairs, enrollment management, and student affairs. That is a picture of our PLC after one of our symposiums, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. You can go to the next slide. I'm big on context, so I use a lot of campus photos here. The first photo at the top of the slide is showing one of our training sessions. So we conducted professional development of many educators in ecological validation through our PLC work. Our training sessions first had introductory EV sessions and then student success symposiums like the other campuses had. And then we continued with some tailored workshops on EV practices and advising, teaching, recruitment, and retention. Through these efforts, hundreds of educators across our campus began learning about EV and infusing those norms into their work with students, as well as with their colleagues. I want to mention how we've created some influence in institutional change. So the student-centered focus of the PLC led to UNK developing research grants, where we've been examining the values of our campus, as well as the needs of our students, staff, and faculty. Care has been taken to involve collaborative working groups to plan, deliver, and reflect on the research, something that we learned from PLC. These results are working to inform changes to our campus systems, such as making improvements in our campus academic advising. Many educators and departments that have received training in EV norms at UNK are also implementing changes and integrating practices with students. Some examples I would share are we have training being developed for new faculty on our campus, and that training is going to include EV materials. EV norms are now encompassed in best practices that are shared with our campus academic advisors. In fact, we have campus leaders, administrators who are saying we are an EV campus. So all of these efforts in education coming out of the PLC work is changing our ecology to better support students at UNK. Finally, I want to mention how we've been elevating student-centered practices at UNK. So the PLC influence on campus led to the development of a Loper Success Hub, which you can see in the bottom right corner of this slide. This space opened in fall 2024 in our newly designed library as a space where all students can seek assistance. Several independent departments on our campus combine their support services in that one area. And this past year, we had over 16,000 student visits from over 1,700 individual students. So that was a powerful start in supporting all students through this individualized space. And then finally, I want to mention for this slide that in fall 2025, UNK is going to deliver a new freshman seminar course called Loper 101. We are the Lopers here at UNK. And this class is going to partner faculty and staff members to educate all incoming first-year students. Collaboration between the General Education Council and educators in enrollment management and student affairs has led to the development of this student-focused course. I definitely believe that the collaborative work of the PLC has impacted that happening over time on our campus. You can go to my final slide, please. So I've thrown some pictures on here to represent these different areas about what was most meaningful for me as a participant in PLC. So first of all, the relationships. The PLC helped me to build trust with colleagues at UNK and the research team. Our experience together fostered a safe community where we were able to share our beliefs, our practices, our frustrations, and our vision for student success on our campus. Additionally, collaborating with colleagues through the PLC provided needed connection across silos and across the NU campuses like we're speaking to today. Even after all of my years as a practitioner, continuing to find my people bolstered my positivity and campus engagement. So PLC is a great way to get folks engaged on your campus in a new way. The next way that it was meaningful to me was that I was empowered as a change agent. So being part of this work has helped me to believe more in myself as an educator who can impact campus policies, processes, and systems. For instance, I had the opportunity to collaborate on several of the grant proposals developed coming out of our PLC efforts, and I'm currently helping to co-facilitate an EB book club that was referenced earlier in the webinar, and that's happening on our campus. So you can see our groups in the top right and the bottom left images on this slide, which is helping me to create bonds with more student-focused colleagues at UNK. And then finally, what's most meaningful, of course, is the impact of student success. I want to end by acknowledging that through our work, more educators in all areas of campus will interact with students with the intention and the care that they deserve. It's powerful to know that our PLC work, and not just my campus, but in all of the NU campuses, is positively impacting the student experience across educators, across spaces, and across time. So that final image that I wanted to share was me with one of our second year students who came to college kind of set in one area of being a major, kind of had to figure things out. And I know that this student is successful in where they are at today because of colleagues who've worked with her across campus who are trained in EV. So I felt like that was a great image to kind of end my slide with UNK. So finally, as we transition to the next phase of our webinar, I just want to thank our partners at USC for providing the opportunity for those of us who joined you from the University of Nebraska to share about our PLC work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, Amy, and Jennifer, for sharing the context of your campus, but also the really innovative, forward-thinking work of years of efforts to support students in these really thoughtful, humanizing ways. So thank you for sharing all of those insights. I have a question that I'm going to pose, but I'd also really love for our 60+ participants who are here with us right now to offer your questions that you have to the group that we can share in this space. They can be questions that are to all of our panelists, or maybe you saw something in their presentations, like a specific example of their efforts, and you have some more questions about how they made that happen, since we know a lot of this work, again, is years in the making. So my question for our panelists, so if Amy and Jennifer and Melissa all want to come off camera, that would be great. And come on camera. And my question to all of you is, what advice would you give to a campus that's maybe here and excited about this PLC idea you all have talked about? If they're thinking about starting a PLC in this current moment and climate, what are some words of advice that you all have for them?
I can share. I think that when we started the PLC, we're all go-getters and we want to take action right away. And it was really important that we slowed down and we spent time learning together. We've referenced that in several ways on the webinar, but it is really a key component in building trust with one another and hearing one another and starting to recognize the expertise that is present on your campus, so that once that trust is built and that safety is built, then you know how you can proceed together as a team. So it really is a team building opportunity, finding a common language and being able to make the progress that you want to make and having a professional learning community.
And I think kind of building on what Jennifer just said, we are all go-getters, and it's starting small. We can't, conquer everything. So smaller, actionable kinds of projects led to bigger and bigger things. So building on our successes.
I would echo what they've just said, but also I think, and I talked about this briefly about the value of cross-functional groups. Oftentimes we think in our campus around student support as being either student life or academic affairs, and we don't really think about units outside of those areas, business and finance, or planning, region, but I think the more cross-functional you have it, especially for people who don't normally think of themselves as being student success supporters, they may never have a student in their office. They're coming to our campus and working every day, but they don't interact with students at all. But that doesn't mean that they're not impacting the ecosystem for student success. So I think the broadest brush you can take is the best one for really being transformative and really rethinking what you think you already know about your university.
I love that. Thank you. We have a question from one of our attendees. Did your PLCs focus on student success in general, or did you focus on a specific idea or concept related to student success? If the latter, how did you come to the topic or concept? Did the PLC decide, or was it decided before the PLC was formed?
Well, on our campus, our strategic plan is focused on increasing degree completion and closing equity gaps. So the past research itself is around promoting at-promise student success, really first generation, low income, underrepresented ethnic, racial, minoritized students. So we really leaned into that perspective to understand why are there gaps in equity on our campus and what we could do to resolve those or to address them.
And ours was really, about retention, looking at retention rates and looking at completion rates, and which are generally, there's a greater percentage of students who don't complete or persist at a metropolitan university. So we really started from there, saying, what kinds of things can we do? What are the reasons students are leaving or they're not continuing? And then we really, that helped shape what our projects are going to be.
On our campus, our approaches were data informed like the other campuses. And additionally, I think some of what we focused on came out of those important first year conversations where we were learning together and talking about what was happening on our campus, and certain things continued to bubble up. So I mentioned on one of my slides that academic advising is a system that we need to change. And we came to realize it was about the way we communicated with students. It was about how different educators took different approaches. It was about all advisors across campus learning about one another. So these different topics would just kind of keep bubbling up. And for us, that is where we identified, like, this is where we wanted to put our focus as we moved out of year 1 into year 2 and 3.
Thank you so much. Super, super helpful for context. Our next question that we have from an attendee is, knowing what you know now, what, if anything, would you do differently related to the PLCs and this work?
I can say something. It was a 3-year experience for our PLCs, and one of the challenges that we had, we only started with 13 people to begin with. And then we had several people transition to other universities. Which was great for them. They were taking, uh, better jobs, higher level authority, great opportunities for them. But we lost sort of a critical mass of our PLC. And initially, when it first happened, we said, well, we want to keep the PLC the way it is because we've developed a common language and a shared understanding. And we thought it would be hard to have somebody join. But by year 3, we had lost so many people that we kind of dwindled. So I think that's something I would rethink about, and it would still be complicated, but I think we should have integrated newer members and expanded our circle, rather than sort of closing it down.
I'll piggyback on what Amy is sharing there with change over time. So there was not only change in the members of our PLC, but there were also transitions in leadership on our campus. And so we had to continue to adjust. I am someone who likes to take a project and run with it and get it done. And so I had to learn some flexibility because as changes happen with people and leadership, you have to adjust your timelines or things may not work out the way that you think they're going to. So it's a good lesson in teamwork. And I think making sure that we're taking time as a PLC then to reflect on that so that we learn from it and can continue to use those lessons to move forward is important.
Yeah, I think keeping the idea of this is a process and it doesn't happen after 1 or 2 meetings, that this is going to evolve, and continue to remind myself as well as the other members of the group that we're making progress. Because when you only meet a few times during the academic year, even though, and then you go back and you're doing your own job, sometimes you lose track of the progress that you're making.
Thank you so much. We're getting so many wonderful questions and hard questions, but I think also speaking to what you shared, Jennifer, about changes in leadership that happened during the PLC. How did you all get executive senior leadership buy-in for the PLCs?
Well, for our campus, this was, kind of like what Amy said, this was part of our strategic plan. This is what we're doing. And we have the Thomason Learning Community, and we also have a Goodrich Scholar community in our at our university. So we've seen the power of what these learning communities and this really intentional student support the effect that has on retention and completion. So there was already buy-in from the university and the leadership from that.
On our campus, I think another element of what was effective was having the right leaders of our PLC. So having folks who had been doing ecologically validating work and could go to leadership and talk with them about how this was going to help our campus. They were very aware of what had happened within our learning community over years. So they knew about those best practices. They knew about the outcomes for graduation and retention. And so having knowledgeable PLC leads who were great relationship builders, I think also, I'm kind of the mindset of like, I'm an effective educator if I'm continually calling people in, like, let's do this work together, let's make progress. And I think PLC was definitely, kind of matched my values, which made the work that we were doing really rewarding. And I think our campus administrators were very happy to have people leading from a different area of campus, creating ideas, looking at research, working together to examine practices, because that's really important in order to move campus culture.
Yeah, I would just add, similar to Jen describing leadership changes, we also had leadership changes on our campus, a new chancellor, a new provost, a new vice chancellor for student life, a new vice chancellor for research. So I think part of it was just trying to communicate and update to new people what we were doing, because we had framed our whole accreditation initiative around this topic. And then we had a whole bunch of new leaders that we sort of had to update. And I think that was a good learning for me, is I'm all not assuming everybody knows what you're doing, right? To be continually communicating to, especially when there's a transition change of, these are the people, here's what's going on, here's how we can help you as you're onboarding to this institution. If you want to interface, here's this community who's positioned to help support you.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much like political strategy that's baked into all of your answers. So we've talked about how you all got this buy-in of executive senior leadership. Another question from one of our panelists is related to kind of some of the symposia, some of the outward facing events that you all held. So the question is, how did you generate institutional buy-in or navigate shared governance on campus? So what strategies did you use to engage, especially non-student facing departments?
On the UNK campus, when we had our first Student Success Symposium, we were very intentional about the educators across our campus that we invited. So we were like, who are our allies? Who are the people that are going to be excited about this concept, are going to want to come in and learn, and to kind of create that groundswell of excitement around the work that the PLC was doing, and around the concept of ecological validation. So I think that got people talking. And so the word of mouth started happening across our campus. And then we continued to call people in. So we'd be like, hey, you were at the financial aid office. Can you make sure you tell your colleagues? And so we just did a lot of, as I mentioned, calling in of our colleagues and reaching out to departments. So even with the EV book club that I'm continuing to do at UNK now, I sent some emails yesterday that said, hey, no one from your department has been part of this past year. I would love if you would maybe think about sending a representative, because we want to make sure this is spreading across campus. So also being aware of who's involved so that you can continually be includers on your campus.
I agree completely with what Jennifer said, and the strategy. We implemented the same type of strategy. And I think now with this EV committee that was started this year, I think it's going to continue to spread.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to our attendees for these wonderful questions. And I'll do a final transition to Dr. Adriana Kizar next.
Thank you so much, Leanna, and everyone for sharing your wisdom. It's been such a pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to be in partnership with you over these last few years. And I'm leaving with, and I'm sure others are, those messages around how important this time together is to build trust and networks that will go on, and have a life of their own and support student success. That is so critical, and really the value of we are all educators, and working together, changing our educational practices changes the cultures of our campuses fundamentally, and you all got people who may not see themselves as educators to see themselves that way going forward, which I think is so powerful. And I loved hearing about the ways that you navigated the political environments, but just, the environments that we work in that, are, as we said, generally not set up or designed always for student success, and the ways that you were able to navigate and shift those spaces. So thank you for all those, sets of ways to rethink. And I'm sure you've left everybody with a lot of thoughts forward. And I just want to encourage people who are on this call we recorded this. It's going to be available on the Pullias website to forward this to your colleagues who you think would see value in this as well. I think is a great way. You could use this very webinar and another professional development on your campus. So just encourage that kind of spreading of wisdom. So thanks everyone, and everybody have a great whatever is left of your semester. Shout out to the whole team for being here as well.